Hello, all you freedom-loving people. President Trump scored a victory in Letitia James's case against him for fraud. Putin laid down his demands to end the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the FBI raised alarms about Russia's cyber attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure. Okay, let's get into it. Today, President Trump scored a major win with a New York appeals court that threw out the $500 million penalty in the business fraud case that was brought by Letitia James. While the finding of liability against President Trump can still stand for now in the case against him, the damages award, which started at $350 million and with interest got close to $500 million, has been thrown out. President Trump had posted a bond of $175 million while the appeals process plays out in the New York Appellate Division. With the new ruling, his bond will be returned to him. The core reason for the ruling was essentially because there was not enough of a showing that there were actual victims, because this was a civil fraud lawsuit, not a criminal case. The allegation was that President Trump habitually overvalued his own assets when he was applying for bank loans, but President Trump argued that the banks were not damaged because he paid back the loans plus interest. Today, the appeals court ultimately affirmed the judgment from New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron, who was overseeing the case, but the five-judge panel was divided regarding the underlying claim of fraud. There were three separate opinions which allowed a path forward for another appeal for the fraud allegations. Yesterday, the Texas House passed a newly drawn congressional map that will give Republicans 5 extra seats in the House if it passes in the Senate. The bill was passed with an 88-52 vote, which matched the results of an earlier procedural vote. The newly drawn congressional map will eliminate a Democratic district in the Austin area and cause a possible race between Democratic Representatives Lloyd Doggett and Greg Casar. The bill now heads back to the state Senate before reaching Texas Governor Greg Abbott's desk. So let's quickly go through the timeline of how things have progressed. During the first special session on August 4th, over 50 Texas Democrats left the state and went to several blue states in an attempt to oppose the Republican-led redistricting. But despite their leave, the Texas Senate still passed the earlier version of the map on August 13th. Then, on August 14th, the House Democrats announced 2 conditions for returning. One condition was the end of the first special session, and the second condition was California's introduction of a redrawn congressional map that would respond to the redistricting map of Texas. The redistricting map of California would seek to add 5 Democratic seats in California. Then, on the same day, on August 14th, California Governor Gavin Newsom called for a special election to approve a redrawn state congressional map. So the second condition was met. Then, Governor Abbott announced a second special session on August 15th, so both conditions were met. So, after 2 weeks, the AWOL Democrats returned to Texas on August 18th. Then that same day, Texas House Speaker Dustin Burrows announced that the chamber had a quorum to approve the newly drawn congressional map for Texas, and they passed the bill at 6 p.m. yesterday. Last night, President Trump cheered the bill. He wrote on True Social, "Texas never lets us down. Florida, Indiana, and others are looking to do the same thing. More seats equals less crime, a great economy, and a strong Second Amendment." In another post, President Trump also asked Republicans to eliminate the mail-in voting and electronic voting machines before it's too late, and he called for the 1/10 the cost, faster, and more reliable alternative, paper ballots. President Trump asserted, "If we do these 2 things, we will pick up 100 more seats." The talks over the possible security guarantees for Ukraine have already started, but the details are still unclear. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Zelensky said that he wants clear answers within 10 days on what kind of security guarantees Ukraine can expect. Only then will he agree to sit down with President Putin. According to the special envoy to Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is spearheading the efforts to draft the security guarantees. Kellogg also described the main plan as a series of actions which are ranked from high to low risk and would include everything from diplomatic steps to military measures. Pentagon officials say that they're now planning training exercises to figure out what kind of support they can give Ukraine beyond just weapons. But U.S. and European planners would need time to determine what is militarily feasible and acceptable to Russia. Reportedly, one option was to send European forces to Ukraine, but put the U.S. in charge of their command and control. France and the UK have both supported troop deployments, but the Germans have been more skeptical. German Chancellor Merz has signaled his openness to troop deployments, but he also emphasized that such a decision would require him to discuss it in Berlin with the coalition partners. But President Trump ruled out sending U.S. troops to Ukraine on Tuesday.
What kind of assurances do you feel like you have that going forward and, past this Trump administration, it won't be American boots on the ground defending that border?
Well, you have my assurance, I'm president, and I'm just trying to stop people from being killed, Charlie. Look, they're losing from 5,000 to 7,000 people a week.
The nature of U.S. military aid to Ukraine under a peace deal is still unclear. Air support could take many forms, such as missile defense systems or fighter jets enforcing a no-fly zone. But Russia wants a guarantee that Ukraine will never join NATO, which is what President Trump also agrees to.
It can't be NATO because that's just not something that would ever happen. They couldn't do that. So who would want that? I mean, if you were Russia, who would want to have your enemy, your opponent, sitting on your line? You don't do that. So it was always thought that Ukraine was sort of a buffer between Russia and the rest of Europe.
Actually, today, President Putin made his demands clear. Reportedly, President Putin would agree to freeze the front lines where it currently stands in Kharkiv and Zaporizhia and relinquish some territory it has captured. But he said he wants the Donbass region handed over and no Western troops in Ukraine and no NATO admittance. Russia is also unwilling to accept troops from NATO countries acting as peacekeepers on the ground in Ukraine. Also yesterday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that attempts to resolve security issues related to Ukraine without including Russia were a road to nowhere. Lavrov said, "I'm sure that in the West, and above all in the United States, they understand perfectly well that seriously discussing security issues without the Russian Federation is a utopia. It's a road to nowhere." In the meantime, NATO defense chiefs held a virtual meeting yesterday to discuss security guarantees. After the meeting, Admiral Dragon, the head of the NATO Military Committee, posted on X, "On Ukraine, we confirmed our support. Priority continues to be a just, credible, and durable peace." Besides discussions about the type of assistance, many are discussing the location of the trilateral talks between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. Today, Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó offered to host the meeting in Budapest. He said in a daily podcast on Facebook, "If we are needed, we are ready to provide appropriately fair and safe conditions for such peace negotiations. We are pleased if we can contribute to the success of peace efforts." Hungary is one of the few European places that President Putin could visit without fear of arrest on international criminal court charges, since Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán maintains close ties with President Putin. But President Putin appears to have other ideas and has repeatedly said he wants the next talks to take place in Moscow. He said it in person to President Trump at their Friday summit, and he reportedly said it once again to President Trump on Monday when President Trump phoned him during the meeting with European leaders at the Oval Office. But reportedly, President Zelensky immediately turned down the idea. And on Tuesday, French President Macron suggested holding the meetings in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Swiss foreign minister welcomed the idea also. Switzerland would grant immunity from international arrest warrants for all Russians in the meeting. Yesterday, the FBI warned that Russian hackers had breached computer systems at manufacturing plants, power grids, water treatment facilities, and at other critical infrastructure in the United States and across the world. Hackers tied to the Russian Federal Security Service, which are known as Berserk Bear and Dragonfly, were caught by the FBI using cyber attacks to get into computer networks. The FBI said that hackers have spent the past year breaking into devices and stealing configuration files from thousands of U.S. networking systems that were tied to critical infrastructure. And the hackers didn't just steal files, they used their access to explore around, gather intelligence, and zero in on control system protocols and applications. The FBI said that the group has been going after old unsecured network devices. They're exploiting weak spots like SNMP and Cisco Smart Install. These are the systems that no longer receive security updates. And in the United States, sectors like energy, water, telecom, aviation, and even the government are at higher risk because a lot of their systems still rely on the outdated equipment that is harder to protect. A new infectious disease, chikungunya fever, has emerged in China. The mortality rate of this disease is low, but people who are affected with the virus may suffer from physical weakness for many years. So far this year, more than 240,000 cases of chikungunya fever have been reported worldwide, with 200,000 cases in Latin America. Chikungunya fever has not spread to the United States and Canada, but it has developed in Mexico. And there are only 8,000 cases reported in China. However, it's hard to believe the official figures released by the Chinese Communist Party. The real number is certainly much higher than that. The relevant Chinese Communist Party authorities have launched emergency measures to try and contain the virus. The measures taken by the Chinese Communist Party are reminiscent of the public health measures taken in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The source of infection for chikungunya disease is mosquitoes. Therefore, the CCP has focused its efforts on eradicating mosquitoes to prevent the spread of the disease. Mosquito larvae are laid near water or in water. Ponds, ditches, or containers with standing water can all become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. The Chinese Communist Party launched a massive mosquito eradication campaign, particularly in Guangdong province, where an outbreak of chikungunya fever occurred in China. So, what are the specific measures being taken? First, they are visiting every household to inspect and eliminate potential mosquito breeding sites. Any area where water may accumulate must be eliminated. For example, water may accumulate under the pots of potted plants, so potted plants should not be kept. Flowers and plants grown on balconies or rooftop gardens were also not spared. And authorities even deployed large cranes to smash potted flowers on the rooftop gardens of high-rise buildings, regardless of whether there was water inside. Of course, the broken flower pots had to be cleaned up by the owners themselves. If you don't want government officials to come to your home and disturb you, and you deliberately hide away, the results will be even worse. They will break into your home. In rural areas, some people use locks with iron chains to lock the gates of their courtyards, but government officials will simply use a welding torch to cut the chains. Government authorities do not spare plants in residents' homes, but fallen leaves and dead branches in parks are left unattended. There are also posts online stating that large areas of vegetables in villages in the suburbs of Guangzhou have been dug up by excavators because the vegetable fields are waterlogged. So, do you think that this is extreme? There are even more extreme cases. Some older houses have also been demolished by the government. Some people say that the government deliberately chose this time to demolish some old houses that they had wanted to demolish before. In normal circumstances, the government has to compensate homeowners with a large sum of money when demolishing houses. Now, under the pretext of epidemic prevention, compensation fees are no longer required. The CCP government also put stickers of different colors on the doors of each house or apartment. If the inspection is passed, a green sticker is affixed. If no inspection is conducted, a red sticker is affixed. A blue sticker indicates that the interior has been cleaned. A black sticker indicates that repeated inspections are required. So, does this scene seem familiar? During the COVID-19 pandemic, all Chinese residents had to show a green health code on their mobile phone before they could go out or take public transportation or enter stores. However, the color of the health code could change at any time with no discernible routine. The most common scenario was that if you were in the same space as someone with a red health code indicating a high risk of infection, then the health code of everyone in that space would also turn red. The problem is that the CCP's health code app could not distinguish whether these people were in the same space or separated by a wall. It simply used physical distance to make a judgment. So sometimes when a person was walking down the street, his health code suddenly turned from green to red, simply because there was a COVID-19 patient in a building that he just passed by. Then the situation became very awkward. This person could no longer take public transportation or enter various buildings. Even if they walked home, they could not enter the community or apartment building. So they could only wait on the street until the health code turned green again, which could take 24 hours or longer. So you may ask, where would they stay at night? During the pandemic, the CCP officials didn't care if you had a place to stay at night or not. Now, let's go back to the CCP's approach to mosquito control. In addition to removing stagnant water, they also spray large amounts of insecticide to kill mosquitoes. Looking at photos online, I would mistakenly think they are spraying poisonous gas. Well, in fact, they are spraying toxic gases, specifically toxic pesticides. Regardless of the type of insecticide, it will inevitably contain pyrethroid. Although manufacturers claim that pyrethroid is highly effective in killing mosquitoes and is low in toxicity to humans, according to the official website of the U.S. National Center for Biotechnology Information, pyrethroid can be absorbed by the human body through the skin, mucous membranes, and respiratory tract. Close contact with high doses can cause acute asthma attacks and even death in children and adults. Long-term exposure can even cause pneumonia, chest pain, and epilepsy, while short-term exposure can cause headaches, muscle tremors, convulsions, coma, and other neurotoxic symptoms. A 2016 Chinese paper pointed out that exposure to pyrethroid pesticides increases the risk of brain tumors in children. Another 2019 Mexican paper showed that pyrethroid pesticides have genetic toxicity, inducing gene rearrangements, altering gene expression, and modifying DNA, leading to lymphoma and leukemia. The government website of Changsha, a city in central China, clearly states that the mosquito repellent that they spray contains cypermethrin. Cypermethrin is moderately toxic to humans. Skin contact can cause numbness, stinging, itching, burning, bladder incontinence, ataxia, seizures, and even death. In experiments, it also causes infertility in mammals. According to the mosquito control standards of the CCP Health Commission, organophosphate pesticides are also used in spraying of insecticides in Guangdong's mosquito eradication campaign. Organophosphates are extremely harmful to humans. Once they enter the body, they can cause neurological disorders and respiratory dysfunction. In severe cases, they can cause pulmonary edema and coma, posing a serious threat to the patient's life. And to ensure the effectiveness of mosquito control, these cities do not spray the insecticides just once, but spray it 2 or 3 times a day. So I don't know whether the harm caused by the chikungunya fever is greater than the harm caused by the mosquito killing spreading to the human body. I also don't know whether the CCP government is killing mosquitoes or killing people. Of course, on the surface, the mosquitoes are indeed eliminated. However, after a few days, the residents found that there were even more mosquitoes than before. This is because the mosquitoes' natural enemies, such as dragonflies and spiders, had also been killed by the pesticides. The reproductive cycle of mosquitoes is short, but that of their natural enemies is long. This means that when a new generation of mosquitoes emerges, there are no natural enemies to control the population. As a result, the new mosquitoes become even more rampant. The CCP has focused its effort to prevent the spread of the epidemic on eliminating mosquitoes. Logically, this sounds reasonable, doesn't it? In fact, this theory does not hold up to scrutiny. Take Guangzhou, for example. Guangzhou is located in southern China, where the climate is hot and humid, and there is a dense network of rivers. The largest river is the Pearl River, which is the fourth largest river in China and the second largest in terms of water flow. Such a large river cannot possibly disappear, so mosquitoes will always be able to find places to breed. It also rains frequently in Guangdong. When it rains, countless puddles form, which are natural breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Epidemic prevention personnel can dig up vegetable fields, but can they harden all the land? Even if you want to eliminate mosquitoes, there are smarter ways to do so. A Chinese netizen offered a good suggestion that is simple and easy to implement. He recommended learning from the wisdom of the ancients and going with the trend. Instead of removing standing water, create many containers that are suitable for mosquitoes to lay eggs in, add water to the containers, and then add laundry detergent. Once the detergent dissolves in the water, it will form a thin film on the surface. This film will block the breathing tubes of mosquito larvae, preventing them from breathing normally and ultimately causing them to die. If every household set up such traps on their balconies, allowing mosquitoes to lay eggs nearby, and then they could be eliminated, wouldn't that be a better way than the current foolish, costly, and dangerous method? And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.